So Gillian, we're going to talk about rest, and can you tell me, why don't we rest?
Well, I think we live in a culture that's very much about connecting, and particularly now with social media and so on, there's so much pressure for us all to be available 24/7, and the technologies that we've got make it easier for us to kind of never be away from other people, essentially, and so to kind of disconnect. For many people now, it seems really alien to them. And so it's really easy just to get into habits of always being on and always being connected and always checking emails and texts and so on, and never having any downtime. We know there's a little analogy with an elastic band, that for elastic bands to stay in good condition, they can stretch, but then they also need time to go back to their original shape. And that if you keep them in a state of being permanently stretched, eventually that elastic band will snap. But if you allow it to go back to its original shape each time, then that elastic band can last for years and years and years. And it's similar with us as well, with our bodies and what we know about our minds and the way that our minds work, that we need some downtime, we need some rest and relaxation time. Otherwise, we end up being stretched to breaking point.
So what are the benefits? What are the benefits of rest then that we need? What are some of the things?
Well, I didn't realise, but until the 1990s, the sort of brain scanning technology, we didn't actually know what the brain was doing even during rest. And it was during the 90s that they sort of made advances with fMRI scanners and other forms of brain scanning. And they actually found that during rest periods, the brain was still really active and processing different things. And it's this idea that actually we work on a task, maybe quite intensively, but we need time away from that task for our brain to kind of process it. And I don't know if you've ever had this scenario where you kind of work on something and it's a really difficult problem, or it's an issue where you just don't feel like you're getting anywhere. And then you come away from the situation and you maybe go for like a walk, or maybe go, you know, you're doing something completely mundane, or just chilling out watching telly, or reading a book, or just doing something completely non-related, but it's restful activity. And the next time you come to the problem, you find that you've managed to solve it. Or even you have a little aha moment when you're on your walk or something along those lines. And it's just giving ourselves time to kind of switch off and to switch down. Allows, our brain isn't inactive during those times. It's actually doing some really important processing at an unconscious level, which then allows us to do lots of problem solving and to be more creative as well. And when you look at the lives of a lot of creative people, particularly, but scientists as well, they often didn't work that long hours during the day, but they would have quite a sort of concentrated periods of playing tennis, going for walks, having naps during the day. Can you believe it? I mean, to be fair, like when we look at things like Dickens and Darwin and so on, these were entitled males. Yeah. So, you know, they had the money to maybe not have to do lots and lots of work.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of other examples that I read about that where people made the time to kind of rest deliberately, even though they did have jobs that needed to earn some money and so on. The importance of building in sort of deliberate rest times is there really, that we need to try and do that, even though we feel like
it's tricky.
How are we going to fit it in?
So you talked a bit about restful activity. What are the sorts of things we can do to rest?
Well, varied really, in terms of restful activities, and it's very personal. So, for example, I know you love gardening, and for you, gardening is probably quite a restful activity because it's quite meditative and you lose yourself in the flow of it.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, gardening is a chore. It's the weeding, it's like having to get it done. I don't feel rested at the end of the gardening session. No, sorry. But for me, going for a walk or going for a run, I actually find quite therapeutic and restful. Reading a book, anything that allows you to feel like you've had some brain off time, essentially.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of varied for different people.
And what about children? How can we encourage children to get enough rest?
Well, there I think we've got to be good role models. I mean, my mum was a terrible role model for me because she used to sit down and if we were to watch telly together, she'd go, "Aren't we naughty? Sitting down." And literally, that was her mentality. She was on the go all the time, and to stop being productive at any point in time, for her, was almost like it was a sin. And so I learned that, and that was very much ingrained into my way of being, and kind of had to unlearn it, really, in terms of allowing myself time to rest. And I think inadvertently we can give our children those sorts of messages, because if we are always being productive and working, and they don't see us resting, then they get the message very strongly that this is not okay to rest and have downtime. And maybe at this point in their lives, that's, you know, not something that they then choose then to not have rest time, because they may be still engaged in their play and so on. But as they get older and they become adults, I sort of worry about the impact that will then leave a legacy in their life, as my own mum did for me, you know. So I think being a positive role model is, you know, a really important thing. Just looking at the balance of their day as well. Are they too busy? Even though maybe they've got lots of activities that are nice, is there any downtime for them where they're just chilling? Is there any sort of activity that's there where they can properly switch off, rather than having to be on the go all the time? And it'll depend on the child and the activity, because for some children, going to ballet or dance or something will be a restful, meditative activity for them that they completely get into the flow of. And for others, it'll be quite a stressful.
Yeah.
You know, they'll be looking at us as random, wondering if they're going to be good enough, and that's actually not at all downtime for them. That's actually kind of quite stressful time. So it's really being quite sensitive to your own child and what they're getting out of their day and the balance of their day, I think.
I think balance is an interesting word, isn't it? I'm just thinking about maybe children spending huge amounts of time like watching TV, or huge amounts of time doing one single thing, whereas what we're talking about is different activities that engage you in different ways.
Yeah.
And try and have a balance, yeah.